right, everyone, it's 7 o'clock, top of the hour. It's great to see you tonight. Welcome, everyone, to the Arts and Culture Grand Junction City Council Candidate Forum. I'd like to thank the hosts of this event, the Avalon Theater Foundation, the Arts Center, Grand Junction Creative Alliance, Grand Junction Symphony Orchestra, Museums of Western Colorado, and Mesa County Libraries. I'm Michelle Boisvenu-Fox. I'm Director of Mesa County Libraries, and I will be your moderator for tonight. With us, we have 6 candidates for City Council joining us tonight. Running in District A, we have Mark Mcallister. Hello, Mark. We have Rick Taggart. Good to see you, Rick. From District G, we have Greg Heitz. Hello, Greg. And Dennis Simpson.
Good evening.
Hi, Dennis. From District E, we have Abe Herman. Hello, Abe.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. And our at-large candidate, Randall Wrights, is also with us tonight. Hello, Randall.
Great to be here tonight.
Good to see you. Thank you to all the candidates for joining us tonight. This event is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be shared by the hosting organizations tomorrow. Please see our social media accounts for more information. All audience members are in listen-only mode. So it might sound kind of quiet because it's just us yakking away here, but there are more people joining us. Questions for the candidate forum tonight were collected from our host organizations and then condensed to reduce duplication. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to introduce themselves here at the start, and then we will move into questions. My plan for the questions is I'm going to ask them for each of you the way that I introduced you in the beginning, and I'd like you to keep your comments to 2 minutes so we can have as many questions to cover as we possibly can in our time together this evening. So to start off with, I'm going to have Mark Mcallister give your 2-minute introduction.
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to do this. So my name is Mark Mcallister. I'm a native to Grand Junction, 5th-year native to the Western Slope. My wife and I have raised 3 beautiful children here. 2.5 of them have gone through college. One's in his 3rd year here at CMU. 26 years been married. I'm a strong community supportive type person, just so you know that. I've worked on some programs like Back the Badge, a lot of behind the scenes things. So I feel like it's my turn to step forward and actually get involved with the community at its community position. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to tell you up front, when it comes to music and arts, I was the kid they put in the very back row. I'm not the kid that sings well or draws very well. So I'm here to learn from you folks. I want to listen to what your wants and needs are. And that's very important to me. Even though it's not my wheelhouse, I need to know what your thoughts and how you feel about the needs of our community are. So that's why I'm here, is to listen to you and learn. So give me a little leeway if you would, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your comments. Rick Taggart, you're next.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to all of you that have put this on this evening. I am Rick Taggart. I moved here in the early 80s, was fortunate to come here and purchase a company called Marmot that maybe several of you may be aware of, and ran that company for many years, and then sold it to a much larger corporation, and then commuted to this valley for a very long time, and then returned home here full time in 2010. Today, I spend my time in the classroom, working with wonderful students, primarily juniors and seniors at CMU in the Davis Business School, a place that I love to be and love to be with students. I am married. I married a family. When I first came here to Junction, I was a pretty confirmed bachelor up until that point, but married a family and have 4 wonderful children, 3 of which live in this valley and 1 lives down in Phoenix. I have always spent a great deal of time volunteering in this community and have sat on boards like the St. Mary's Board, on the Grand Junction Economic Partnership, on the Business Incubator. I helped form the Suicide Coalition, Prevention Coalition, with a man who died recently, Mr. Herb Bacon, because we both lost people to suicide that were very close to us. And I do come from a performing arts background. I don't do it any longer. My mother was a wonderful music teacher, and I performed right out of high school, was in the original cast of Up With People, both as a vocalist and a trumpet player. Do I today continue that? I don't. I still have a great love of that, and one of my sisters continues to be a performing artist. So it's something near and dear to my heart, and I have my wonderful wife is an artist, so I get to see a lot of new paintings in my life on a daily basis. So arts and culture, and in particular music, are very, very important to me.
Thank you, Rick. All right, Greg Heights, you're next.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks again for the organizations that put this together. It's great to be here. And yeah, so Greg Heights, I'm candidate for City Council District D. I'm a Western Colorado native, born in Delta, Colorado. I'm the product of homeschooling, and we have 3 kids. My wife's a realtor here in town, so we're business owners, we're boots on the ground. Seems like we're involved in a little bit of everything. Our kids are going, our 2 older kids are going to a kind of a homeschool, charter school hybrid. That's been working really well for us. And our little guy, Oliver, he's in preschool. So I own a clinic here in town that keeps me fairly busy during the day. Started out right in the Great Recession hit, and had 1 employee at the time. And since then, we've been able to grow it to 11 employees. So feel really blessed for that. Like I said, we're active in the community. We're active in our church. We go down to Mexico each year and do house builds, and that's a real blessing, and it's a really neat experience for our kids. They can see that not everybody in the world has an iPhone and a brand new Xbox every year. We enjoy the arts in the community. My wife is an artist. She trained under Sarah Oakley, and we were sad to see her leave the community. But we got some of her art hanging up in our home, and a lot of my wife's as well. So we appreciate the local art scene. And like Mark said, I'd love to hear more from you all. I think we all have a lot that we could learn from the art and culture community. And so I'm looking forward to that tonight. And again, yeah, appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Dennis?
Hi, my name is Dennis Simpson. I've lived in Grand Junction for 24 years and am a retired certified public accountant. My wife, Mary, and I have been married for 44 years. We have 3 grown children and 6 delightful grandchildren. I retired 2 years ago after completing a 40-plus year career in both the private and public sector. I believe the groups represented here tonight provided an important community service to the entire valley. You enrich the lives of our citizens and are a vital part of our local economy. The city and the DDA have done a good job of supporting the arts by providing access to public property and by promoting community events. While preparing for this event, it quickly became obvious that additional city funding of the arts needs to be considered. As a fiscal conservative, I regularly advocate for limited government and using existing revenues wisely to avoid the need for tax increases. As a centrist on social issues, I believe that there is a way to improve funding for the arts and culture without raising taxes. In 2018, voters passed a ballot issue that increased our lodging tax. The new revenue was directed to 3 specific areas, but no money was directed to the arts. I'm not sure how the winners and losers were selected when the ballot issue was written, but I think a persuasive argument could be made that increasing funding for the arts will have every bit as much benefit for our economic health as the entities currently being funded. If elected, I will ask the council to review details of how the lodging tax has been spent and to disclose financial reports to the community with specifics. Once this analysis has been completed, we should consider proposing a new ballot issue that allocates some of the revenue to the arts and culture.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate your comments. Abe, you're next.
Thank you. Thanks for having us tonight. I appreciate all the partner organizations who are putting this on. It's a super important topic. So I'm Abe Herman. I'm running in District E. I'm a small business owner here in town. I own a company that sells products nationally and internationally, very specialized backyard tents for a festival. And the nice thing about it is it's very seasonal. So my whole adult life, I've been able to put a lot of time into volunteerism and giving back to the community. My partner and I live in downtown Grand Junction. She's a nurse at St. Mary's in the cardiac unit. And we love living downtown because we have that creative arts district, the art on the corner, all of the galleries. You know, it's part of what makes our city a great place to live. I'm a mountain biker, a climber, an outdoorsman, a skier. And I don't usually bring this up, but I think in the context of tonight's conversation, I've also been a cello player for 23 years. So unfortunately, the last few months running a city council campaign is a little busy, so I haven't been picking it up as much as I'd like to, but I look forward to when I can play a little more again. So, you know, I'm running because it's a service to our community. I want to see a bright future for our city, make sure we're trending in the right direction. And I think arts and culture are a big part of our happiness and our quality of life. So I'm looking forward to having a discussion on it.
Thank you, Abe. And Randall?
Yes, thank you for inviting us here tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. I consider the organizations that are hosting this forum to be the heart and soul of Grand Junction. It's why we live here. It's why we have such a rich experience here. It's why I live for myself. I thought I would just take a few minutes talking about my children and how they benefited from each of these organizations throughout their childhood. We'll start from age 0 up to age 18 for my oldest now. So libraries, you know, my children have spent hours and hours and hours in the libraries, checking out books, getting magazines, doing school projects. For young parents, it was a godsend to have a library there for us to hang out on days. The museums of Western Colorado, my children adore the Dinosaur Museum. They love the Western Colorado Museum. We spent hours there also on the airplane, getting spit on by the dinosaurs in the museum, just wonderful things. The Avalon Foundation, we have been to dozens of shows at the Avalon. Just every year, like last year, my poor son, he plays trumpet. He's a great jazz musician. We had tickets to our tour, Sandoval, had to miss that because it got canceled because of COVID. But Avalon is a beautiful place. We do the Tuesday night dinner and a movie at least once a month. It's wonderful. The Symphony Orchestra, we've been to countless orchestras, performances in the parks, at the Avalon. It's you know, I think it's a fine orchestra, the best between Denver and Salt Lake City for sure. And then the Art Center, my kids did summer camps at the Art Center. Probably, I bet a total about a year between all of them, with all those weeks put together, learning how to do sculpture, learning how to do basic coding, learning how to do painting. Just a wonderful program where parents who are working can drop the kids off in the morning and pick them up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're going to come out with a handful of projects they completed. And then the Creative Alliance. My kids have been in lots of different acting shows, little things at the Lincoln Park Barn and at just around town. It just kind of, all these things supplement our schools, they supplement our families, they supplement our churches. And so I'm just very grateful for the richness that you bring to our community.
Thank you, Randall. All right, so let's get into some questions. This will kind of help you see where these organizations are coming from and what's important to them. Our first question: studies nationwide have shown that strong partnerships between a city government and the local cultural communities have had a tremendous impact on the quality of life for those communities. That includes a very significant positive economic impact. Grand Junction has enjoyed such partnerships in the past that have resulted in Main Street, Art on the Corner, saving the Botanical Gardens, restoring the Avalon, the Arts and Cultural Commission, and more. Yet these partnerships have not been consistent and have waned in the past few years, due in part to COVID. If elected, what steps would you take to strengthen and even grow the city's partnerships with the local cultural and arts community? And Mark, we're going to start with you.
Okay, I would honor whatever previous agreement that's been made with previous councils. And I think we have to have baby steps to where we go with COVID. I think we look at the community and ask the community, what are the best needs? Where are the first needs? Is it the Botanical Gardens? Is it, where are we going to focus those funds? And I think the only way we do that is to reach out to you folks that have those answers and have the conversation. So I think it's really important to listen to what the needs are. And I would do that for you. I would come to each of those organizations, figure out what those needs are, and try to give a directive from that point of view.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Rick, you're next.
Well, Michelle, I agree with the comment that some of the funding has been relatively sporadic in the last few years due to pressures on the general fund in particular. And I think the best thing that could happen are two things. One, that we need to listen very, very carefully to the needs. And two, the more the different organizations can collaborate with one another and bring to a council an overall vision of what our arts and culture investment should look like, that helps. Sometimes when requests come to city council and they're relatively small, they get lost in the shuffle. And I don't, that's not good, and I certainly don't condone it, but you folks are a very powerful group as it relates to arts and culture. And if there's a way to get everybody together and come up with a plan on an annualized basis, I think it's a great deal, it's a lot easier for us in council to look at that in our budgeting process and try to set aside those funds that will work well for all of you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. Greg, you're next.
Yeah, I would echo what Mark and Rick said. I think those are good points. I think as the city continues to grow, I think there's going to be more interest and utilization in the arts in the community. And so I think hearing from, this particular industry as far as what the needs are, what the wants are, you guys are the boots on the ground in your industry. And so, you would know better than I think anybody. And I agree with Rick. I think, having a ongoing and continuous conversation and not just, have, from year to year, I think we need to have that continue forward so that we really have a good understanding for what those needs are. And I think having those partnerships is going to be important. I've worked on other boards before where we've, you have a few board members that tend to have more interest in one thing than another. And so then those things kind of get president, and then those individuals are off the board, and then others come on, and then they've got their pet projects. And so I think having a board where we can come together year after year and listen to these different organizations and industries, I think is important.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Dennis, you're next.
Thank you. I think there's some immediate improvements that could be implemented that would assist in the eliminating the sporadic nature of the public-private partnership. But first, I'd like to say that I think there are a lot of good things going on in this regard, particularly the relationship with between the DDA and the arts people as relates to use of downtown, the art on the corner, all of the events that happen downtown. Granted, COVID has put a big monkey wrench in the whole idea, but I think it's a positive step, and I think we should build on it. The other thing I think we need to look at as far as the city's role is trying to obtain a more stable funding mechanism for the arts. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the lodger's tax is one of those. I also think that the agreement between the city and the operating OBB, I believe, that operates the Avalon and the Two Rivers Center and the Amphitheater needs to be revisited. I think the city has kind of advocated its responsibility for the property that it owns on Main and has delegated more decision-making on policy issues than is probably healthy for anybody. So one major thing I think we need to work on is that agreement. And perhaps we need to create a city department for arts and culture, so we have someone at the table other than a contractor when money allocations are being discussed. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. Abe, you're next.
Thank you. It's a great question. I believe with some of what's been said, part of it is making sure we keep those lines of communication open, and also finding a more stable funding method. And I think part of the way to get that going is to start really recognizing this, as the question stated, for the economic driver that it is. The most recent study we have is, I believe, 2015. They recognized it as contributing $17 million to our local economy through arts and culture. We have to think about it in terms of tourism dollars, in terms of people coming to the city for these amenities. And I think we have some real opportunities there that we could take a fuller advantage of, like the Creative Arts District. That's something that allows us to bring in some state level funding. So instead of taking out of our own budget, we can use that state level funding for advertising and letting people know about what it is we have going on here. So we definitely need to be taking full advantage of programs like that and working with the DDA to make those things happen. So not only thinking of it as the jobs it creates, the local industry it creates, but also thinking of it as an attraction that can bring people who will contribute to our local economy. And then I think on a larger scale, on a long-term level, the kind of economic development that I believe in is you create a city that's so great that businesses want to be there. And part of that, in terms of quality of life, is the arts and culture and the amenities that we have here. So you could take this track and just say, let's make it as cheap as possible, and let's throw these short-term incentives at businesses and things like that. And maybe there's some merit to that, but I think then you're competing on price. And in any industry, when you're competing on price, you've usually already lost. I think the more sustainable long-term way is to build our community into a place that's so great that communities want to locate here, because the business owners and the employees and everybody else involved wants to live in our community. And arts and culture is a huge part of that. If you're somebody who loves music, the Symphony is a part of that. If you love art, our downtown art scene is a part of that. If you have kids, our museums are a part of that. So we really need to recognize these things as an economic drivers that they are, and put our weight behind it accordingly.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abe. Randall, you're next.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Dennis said. I think he has some great ideas today. I am very curious about the lodging tax. I love sports. I'm a sports fan myself. I've been to the JUCO every year, but I do think that it's time to start sharing that wealth more. The richness of our community goes far beyond just our sporting scene. I think part of that reason we have this imbalance is because I think our city leadership hasn't really had a sense of what to do with the arts. They haven't been the leader at the stage. My message in my campaign is a very positive one, that we are on the cusp of becoming the next great Colorado city. But I feel like the one area where the city could do far better is with the arts. I think it is time for us to have a more robust arts district and arts department, culture department within the city itself. We don't have one. And other cities our size tend to have them. A kind of a coordinating, convening body that sets the priorities for how are we going to fund the arts and culture in our community. We've been relying on all these wonderful nonprofits, people giving of their time, people with day jobs who work in retail or in health and human services, who in the evening come back and give back to the arts and the culture. I think we're big enough now that we can do better than that. And I think Grand Junction needs that. I think, as Abe was saying, there is a very strong business case to be made for arts and culture. I've lived in other cities that had a far better arts and culture scene. And for me, it was such a wonderful thing. We've done well. We've kind of scraped along. People have supported the arts as they can, but it's now time for the city to step forward and do the same.
Thank you, Randall. All right, we're ready for our next question. So Mark, you're back up again. So you're at the top there. Are you ready? Okay, here's the question. What should the role of the city of Grand Junction be in supporting arts and cultural activities? The second part of this question is, should the city continue to support and expand the Avalon Theater? What's behind the Avalon Theater question is that the cornerstone project for the Avalon Theater was completed in 2014. A second expansion of the theater would greatly improve the use of the building so that it can accommodate a wider variety of acts that currently bypass our community due to stage limitations. So the first part of the question, what should the role of the city of Grand Junction be in supporting arts and cultural, and should the city continue to support and expand the Avalon Theater?
So I believe that we should have a partnership with the arts and culture. I think music is great. I think art is great for communities. I look at what Fruta does with the Oktoberfest, with the musicians that they bring in there, and it's a real solid hometown feel when you go to those kind of events. So I think that's really good for the community, especially after the pandemic, to have that type of relationship with the community to go out and offer those events for people to get involved in. In regards to the Avalon Theater, something I didn't speak about earlier on is I'm actually a lighting designer and energy integrator. So I played a big role in the Avalon's last expansion and renovation. So I know a lot about that. I would like to see the plan for that, before I could comment on whether I would approve something like that. I need to know how we're going to expand that. Are we taking up parking space from downtown? There's a lot of other things that you have to consider in that expansion if you're going to push the building out the back, is what I'm understanding. So I would like to see really what the plan is before I could give a yes or no answer on the expansion of the Avalon. But know that that's something that I am involved in, and that's something that would probably be good for the community.
Thank you, Mark. Rick, you're next.
Well, I think the city should have a significant partnership, certainly to support the arts and culture. And I do want to say that we did approve, it's probably about 18 months now, but there is now an arts and culture district. So that is in place with the board right now. So I don't think we need to be talking about should we have it? We have it. And it's a very good group. I think in terms of the Avalon Theater, I'll go back to an area that I think is important to help get us there. We were, through our visitor and convention bureau, trying to manage the Avalon, trying to manage the convention center, and then trying to manage the new amphitheater down in Las Colonias. And the fact of the matter is, we were bleeding at a rate of between $400,000 and $500,000 a year that was being subsidized. Now, mind you, the majority of those activities were more on the music side of arts and culture, but nonetheless, the community and through our general fund, it was costing us $400,000 to $500,000 a year. In the first year after Pinnacle took over, they narrowed that by bringing in a lot more acts to bring that down to less than $200,000. And if it weren't for COVID, I believe we would be beyond break even. And I know my intention all along in that relationship, and like any other agreement, it always could use improvement, but their expertise is in fact bringing small and larger acts to this community. And I agree, Michelle, that the Avalon has its limitations. But where I'm getting to is if we can get over the hump where that's now starts to contribute to the fund, those dollars should all be available to reinvest into the arts. And I think that's been the intent of several of us. We got a new council coming together, and hopefully we can encourage the new council to build on that so that those funds could be significant and they could leverage significant improvements to the Avalon, perhaps not all in one chunk, but over a period of time.
Great. Thanks, Rick. Greg, you're next.
All right. Yeah. So I think Rick hit a lot of those nails on the head. I think there's definitely a role to play between the city and the arts. And like he said, we have a department committed to that, and I think it's important, with us new council members coming on, that we continue to have those conversations. And I've had concerns about the Avalon and Two Rivers Convention Center, looking at the numbers in the past. I think sometimes you have to know what your skills are and what they aren't. And so I think things were better, bringing on this third party, like Rick said. As city council members, in a certain extent, we're fiduciaries, for the city and for the taxpayer dollars. And so we have to make sure that those dollars are spent well. It feels like the Avalon is kind of in this middle ground area. There's certain acts that they just seem to pass by because they don't want to go and do their wardrobe change in a porta potty. They want the facilities, and that's understandable. Like Mark, I don't know a whole lot about this phase 2. I heard $10 million thrown around. We have to also consider, if we do take up part of that back parking lot, there is a cost there as far as public property that's now being taken up as well. So it's not just the build out; it's also taking up that property, and we'd have to make sure that we get a good return on that investment. But again, it feels like the Avalon's kind of stuck in that middle place where you get small acts, but the big acts pass you by, and but we need to be careful. Do you do a let's build it and see if they come approach to that, or and again, as fiduciaries, I think a good city council will look at those numbers, look at the studies, and decide if that makes sense and if that's really the next step for the Avalon Theater. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Dennis, you are next.
Thank you. I think one of the first things we need to do in this community is to convince people with facts that arts and cultural, including the Avalon Theater, are drivers of our economy. There is a study done by an outfit in Denver called the Office of Economic Development and International Travel that would indicate that over 4% of their economy statewide is driven by arts and cultural activity. It's not just that we would want people to get to the culture, but we want people to understand that it's good for business, it's good for the community, and will help fuel our growth to make investments that make sense. I've reviewed the drawings of the proposed tower or the second phase of the Avalon, and while I'm not an engineer or architect or anything close, I think it looks exciting. It's for what can be added, both for the orchestra and for all kinds of performances. So the obvious question is, well, how are we going to pay for that? And I think we need to examine some things that have been going on in recent years as our community has been growing and our economy, and particularly our sales tax revenue, has been going up. And even in the year of COVID, we didn't have any material downturn in our actual sales tax collection, which has led over the years to a significant increase in the fund balance carried over by the general fund of the city. And I think if that growth continues, and perhaps we need to start discussing it now, there will be a lot more options for the city with the funds that have been collected than we've had in the past. And I think by looking at it with open mind and perhaps phasing in the construction project or something like that, we may be able to get it done. But if I'm elected, I would like to see that we do everything we can to complete that project, because it will bring jobs and it will improve our economy. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. Abe?
Thank you. The Avalon is, it's certainly a gem in our community. And like others, I haven't actually seen this plan. I'm excited to check it out, though. There are a lot of great acts that come through it. As a cello player, I was really excited when a couple years ago was Apocalyptica, which if you've never heard of them, it's 4 cello players playing heavy metal music. So it's like pretty exciting, pretty rambunctious show. Things like that are pretty neat. And the more like that we can get, as Dennis is saying, we do need to think of this as an economic driver. Like I was saying in my previous answer, not just the industry itself, but the kind of community it creates and the kind of businesses it attracts to diversify and grow our local economy. I don't think we should shy away from those public-private partnerships like Rick was mentioning. There are some things that are just better done by private companies, and that's a great example of one. If we can make it more fiscally responsible for the city to operate in that way. That's just a way that we can perpetuate the arts more. Funding is always the question, right? And it's no secret to anybody on this call that when money starts to get tight, one of the first things that's cut always is the arts. And that's a detriment to our community because, you know, what kind of community do you want to live in? It's not just the economy. It's not just the outdoor spaces we have. It's also the amenities, the things we get to enjoy. And again, I'm going to start to sound like a broken record, but this is the kind of thing that attracts businesses and attracts a diversified economy. So, you know, I definitely am looking forward to looking into this plan more. It is a question of how we pay for it. And you know, I never want to discount that there are a lot of people in our community who are struggling financially. So I don't think new taxes are always the answer to it, but let's find some creative funding solutions and maybe even some outside grants. You know, if there are other grants we could get at a state or a national level, those are all avenues we should be exploring for our town.
Great. Thanks, Abe. Randall?
Yeah, you know, you look at the history of the remodel of the Avalon, the first phase of the remodel was a great example of the city leveraging funds, a small amount of funds, to get a much bigger benefit for the property they own. The city owns the Avalon Theater, and they put up about a third of the original funds for the first remodel. About a third came from the DDA. About a sixth came from fundraising from the Avalon Foundation, hardworking people hitting up their neighbors and their friends and their colleagues at work. And about a sixth came from other sources. You know, so that's a 1-to-3 ratio is pretty good for anyone who wants to do business. I think with the next remodel, if the price tag is a little bit bigger, and so it might be almost like a 4-to-1 ratio where the city puts up again about $3 million, but gets a $9 million boost from other people who are raising their funds for their product, for their property. I do think that the Avalon Theater is a gem, to use Abe's words. I think we need to preserve it and grow it, but I also think we need to look beyond it. I think, you know, we do have the Las Colonias Amphitheater is a wonderful site. You look at some of the great mountain festivals like in Telluride or in Breckenridge, they're done in parks. We have the Orchestra in parks ourselves. Part of the reason why we're in the parks for the Symphony is because we can't fit on the stage. I met with Kelly Anderson, and he talked about how he actually has to choose different types of eras of symphonies for the Avalon as for the parks. He can fit a Renaissance era symphony there, but he can't get beyond the Romantic period because the symphonies have grown so much bigger and so much more diverse instruments, they can't fit on the stage together at the same time. And so they're kind of off the side in the wings behind the curtains, or they just pick a different genre altogether. And for me, that's kind of sad. And so I want to both grow the theater, support the theater, but also look beyond it and say, we should be a arts district for all the people, for the families on picnic blankets and the wealthy donors that support the arts.
Great. Thanks, Randall. All right, this next question hopefully will be a little bit easier one for you all. It's a little bit more personal, and some of you have talked about this a little bit already, but please give examples of what the arts mean to you and your life in Grand Junction. In what ways have you supported the arts? And we'll start with Mark.
Start with me, huh? Okay. Like I said, this is not my wheelhouse. So I do like concerts, and I have gone to some of the events at the Avalon and enjoyed them, whether it be comedians or whoever that comes in and out. It is a nice getaway, and I appreciate that we have that to offer to our community. I think it is important, especially with the pandemic times, that we have ways for people to get out and enjoy themselves, especially the amphitheater. I think that'll be a real growing experience for people to be out again, active again. And I think the arts really offer that value to the community. I think that's where the growth comes from a point of depression and some of the things that people have gone through with the pandemic. So I think the arts is important that we have that available, because it is an asset to our community as far as people feel. And I listen to music, I listen to the radio, and I know how important it is. So me saying that I don't know all about the arts, I don't know all the little ins and outs about it, but I do recognize how important it is. So I'll just end with that.
Thanks, Mark. And luckily there's so many great organizations in Grand Junction, you know where to go to if you need anyone to fill in the blanks. So
There you go.
There you go. Rick, you're up next.
Well, I think I said in my opening comments that I was blessed to grow up in a very artistic family. And I myself spent almost a year performing all across the country and down in the Caribbean. And when you grow up in a musical family, it never goes away. It's always a part of your life, and it's something that is very special to me, and I treasure those moments. Not only performing, but I treasure those moments with my family and being around artists that are far better than I am. Today, we continue to be involved. We've been members of the Arts Center for a considerable length of time, and given I have my wonderful wife is an artist, and her mom was an artist, and I train with a top clarinetist in the community, and so I'm looking forward to when COVID reduces itself, so I can go to his concerts, and so too as one of the lead trombone players, a good friend. So I enjoy still to this day listening to music of all different types. The Amphitheater in particular, growing up in an area, if anybody's ever heard of Saratoga area and the Tanglewood area, we spent a lot of time on the lawn, and I'm so pleased that we have that, and we've done that since I've been on council, funded that, and I just, while it's not the indoor like the Avalon, it gives another venue for acts to come to this community. So I love the arts, and in particular music. I can't say that I understand painting like my wife does, but I certainly enjoy looking at beautiful art. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Greg?
Yeah, so growing up around here, my wife and I both went to Mesa State College, and I was a biology major, so I had to supplement my education with the arts. It wasn't naturally built in, so I took art appreciation and theater appreciation and music appreciation, and I actually really enjoyed those classes. It was a lot of fun. Those were some good semesters. I got to volunteer at the theater department at Mesa State, and I worked the lights and had the gels and all the things, and I didn't mess up, so that was pretty awesome. So enjoy going to those shows. I really enjoy theater. I was not raised in an arts family. No one played music in my family. And so it felt like we kind of had to supplement that later in life, which is fine. And, but yeah, really enjoy going to the theater. Really enjoy the Symphony Orchestra. We've known several individuals that have played on that orchestra, so we like to go and watch them and support them. Like I said, my wife's an artist. She's not been doing a whole lot since Oliver was born. She's hoping to get back to that. We got her studio set up out in the garage now, finally. And when she studied under Sarah Oakley, Sarah she was pretty. She was able to figure out a way to have a gallery, which I thought was really neat. She partnered up with interiors. So she found a private business that said, "Hey, we have high-end furniture. You have really nice art. Let's create some space for you." So she's able to rent that for pennies on the dollar, and people would come in and look at the art and go buy a $2,000 couch and vice versa. And so Andrea was able to hang some art there as well. And so we were kind of sad to see that end. That was a really neat thing that we had downtown. And Sarah would have classes down in the basement and throw acrylic around, and so we've enjoyed the arts in the community. We've gone to concerts at the Avalon, we've gone to concerts at Los Colonias, and so certainly see the value of what that brings to our community.
Thank you, Greg. Dennis, you are next.
I kind of am on the opposite end of the scale from Rick's background, in that I was raised in a small town over on the East Slope by a school teacher and a wonderful mother. And arts was not as important as making sure we got food on the table and everybody got dressed and went to school. But as time evolved, particularly when I met my wife and we had children, I've more and more become appreciative of what arts, and particularly the symphony, have to offer to a community. I have become an avid listener to classical music. I play bridge too, and sometimes when I'm playing bridge, I put the CPR station on the other screen on the computer so I can listen to that wonderful music at the same time I'm playing bridge. Sometimes my bridge partners think I'm not paying enough attention to bridge, and they may be right about that. My wife made sure our children had a large exposure to music. I remember a lot of piano lessons that ended up great, but were resisted by our children. Now we have grandchildren. I have a 19-year-old grandson who's just a wonder on the piano, and another 8-year-old grandson who just completed his first performance of Bach. And I was excited about those performances as I was about some of the athletic endeavors that those kids, and including my other grandchildren, have been involved in. It's just kind of an eye-opening thing as I get older to see a lot of what I missed in the earlier years and wish that I had another shot at it. But I guess we don't do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Abe, you're next.
Thanks. Arts are a significant part of my life. I'll try not to ramble on and on, but so my dad is an incredible bass player, both stand-up, acoustic bass and electric bass. And he plays in a great local band called Stillhouse String Band, which is bluegrass with a guitar, him on bass. They have a dobra or slide guitar. They've got a banjo, real fun group. And I've played cello over 20 years, but I was classically trained. But a few times they would bear with me and let me sit in and try fiddling a little bit, which is a little tough on cello when you're not used to it. So that's a big part of my life. My brother was a French horn player and mellophone in the marching band. My mom's really the only one who never had the musical bug, but she's in the visual arts. She really loves to make these neat mosaics. So she has a mosaic mailbox and makes things for friends and that sort of thing. My partner Jordan is an excellent watercolor painter, and she's also getting into the mosaic. So that's it on a personal level for me. As far as in a larger sense, it's attending shows at Mesa Theater, shows at the Avalon, going to the Symphony with my parents who retired here in town, going to shows at Las Colinas Amphitheater, going to the Blues Jam at Charlie Dwellington's, and then on days off, my partner Jordan and I, we love to stroll downtown and just go through the art galleries, check things out. I also see it as something, for youth and for personal development. I've done a lot of volunteering over the last few years with homeless youth. And one of the things we can really connect with them on is doing art projects. So, and that's something, maybe you'll ask the question later, but that's something we need as well. I think it's a little more focus in D51 and in our educational system on the arts, because just like when we're talking about funding, when time gets short, the first thing that gets dropped is the arts. And I think it's a critical part of being a well-rounded person. So for me, I did ramble. I said I wouldn't ramble, but the arts are just such a huge part of life. And I think it's a huge part of what makes life fun and what makes our city fun and enjoyable. So I'm a big supporter.
Thanks, Abe. Randall?
Yeah, if I look a little tired today, it's because my son and I do a Monday night radio show at KFM, 9 until midnight. And when you come home from that show, you're still pretty wired. So I didn't get to sleep till 1 o'clock last night. And so, that's just one example of things that we do. I grew up in the poor side of Salt Lake City. My mom was a piano teacher and eventually went back to school and became a piano tuner and piano technician. She had a big shop in her backyard. She loved music. Anytime you talk to her about how to raise a child, the first thing she'll say is, music is the key, music is the language, music is math, teach your kids music and they will excel in life. And that's definitely been my belief about my own children. I think we have a great scene. I love downtown. I moved downtown to be part of the art scene, Arts in the Corner. We purchased an old church, 110 years old, with 3 stained glass windows. I'm going to take classes at a downtown art studio how to make stained glass windows. I love local art. You know, I'm currently in the last semester of a program at Columbia University in narrative medicine. I have just in my middle of my career, come to believe that narrative, that storytelling is how we make the most impact. It's the best way to advocate. And so here at the residency program where we train young family physicians, we do a narrative medicine elective where they take off 2 weeks out of their heavy schedules to read great books, to read great poems, to watch great movies, and to apply that to their patient care. And it's one of the funnest things I do. I just really believe that these things that enrich our lives need to be shared across all levels of society. And the more we can do to make them accessible to everyone, the more rich and livable our community will be.
Thank you, Randall. All right, ready for the next question. The city of Grand Junction owns 3 of the region's largest venues, creating millions in economic impact in downtown Grand Junction alone. What investment priorities regarding those facilities do you or would you support? And I know we've already talked about Avalon, but this is something that our arts community members wanted to hear you talk about. So Mark, we're going to start with you again.
Okay, so I'm going to assume we're talking about Two Rivers, the Avalon, and the Amphitheater.
Yes.
I look at Two Rivers as, to be honest with you, as a place that's lost money for the community. I see all 3 of those venues have crossover where you could have music or arts in any one of the 3. So I would kind of look at the 3 of those and try and decide which one of those venues or 2 of those venues are the best benefit for the community. And I'm, you know, we've just put a lot of investment in renovating Two Rivers. I was part of that as well. So I would like to see how, if we worked with our partners in the arts community, how to break those venues into ones that fit your needs the best. What is the best utilization of those venues? And how do we do that? We know Two Rivers would hold more people than the Avalon right now. Do we try to keep certain events at Two Rivers, the smaller medium events at the Avalon? And do we have more of an outdoor scene that goes with the amphitheater? So I think some management needs to happen there. And I know we're outsourcing some of that management to try and get that back in. As Rick had stated earlier, we were losing money with some of these projects that we have here. So I think as a council member, I really need to look and see where those funds are going. Do one of those venues need to go away? Is that the question? What do we ask? We need to ask the community. We need to ask you, what are the best uses of those venues? And we need to figure that out, because I see a lot of crossover here. And what I want to do is find the best capital to support where your interests are. How do we best utilize that capital to help the arts industry, the music industry? And so I'm going to leave it at that. I really need to dive into that and see what your answers or solutions would be to what's best for you, so I can find a good solution at the end game to offer the funds needed to support any one of those venues.
Thank you, Mark. Rick?
Well, again, if we're talking about Two Rivers, which is and the Avalon and the amphitheater, let's start with Two Rivers, which has now been renamed the Grand Junction Convention Center. The Grand Junction Convention Center, when we upgraded it, it's now 12 months, 18 months ago. There's a second phase of that's also planned and in our capital plan. And in that particular case, what happens is there will be a hotel built that connects, in fact, to the convention center for the purposes of taking on larger conventions, which larger conventions are much more profitable because they bring a lot more outside visitors to our community. And it also will create an additional ballroom, which we have negotiated with the Reimer family, who would be building this, that the ballroom, there'll be a connection between the convention center and this new hotel, so that we have a mini ballroom in there as well. So everything there is being planned, including additional parking out to the south, so that we can take on larger conventions. And if we can take on larger conventions, I come back to the fact that if we can get over that break even in those 3 facilities, those monies can be invested and leveraged very, very quickly. In terms of the amphitheater is a wonderful new facility. The one area that 2 areas that need improvement. One, the bathrooms are not big enough for the size of the facility, and we knew that at the time, but we also wanted to start with smaller acts, and as the bigger acts come, we're going to have to solve that, and we're going to have to extend and invest in that facility to get larger bathrooms, and we're going to need more parking in that vicinity to make it easier for people to attend. So there are plans on the books inclusive of the Avalon, and I would expect once we get out of this terrible COVID situation and we can really start getting towards that break even and beyond in those 3 facilities, I can see investments coming.
Thank you, Rick. Greg?
Yeah, so similar thoughts to Mark and Rick. I wasn't aware of the situation that Rick spoke of. I was actually having a conversation with someone else this week about Two Rivers Convention Center, which now has been renamed, but I mean, it's been there forever. I went to a Ziggy Marley concert there. Goodness, I don't even know how old I was. That was a long time ago. Clouds of smoke in the building. I kind of think outside the box, you know, sometimes I'll spitball things and sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. But, you know, my thought was, again, not knowing what Rick was just about to mention was, oftentimes you'll see hotels with their own convention centers. I mean, you go to Vegas, it's my wife's a realtor, and her company, every time they do their big family reunion, it's either Vegas or, you know, it's in these large cities with big hotels and big convention centers. So oftentimes you'll see that as part of the private sector. And so that was kind of one of my thoughts is, you know, has that ship sailed? Is it now time to maybe consider selling off that entire part to a large hotel that would want to come in and either take what we have for a convention center or completely rebuild or add on or those sorts of things. I know there's the parking lot over on the north side that the city's kind of looked at that, as well as the city market there. And I think there's some opportunities there to make some things happen. And if we were to sell off some property, could we then potentially take that money and put, you know, 10 million or whatever it is towards the Avalon? You know, again, that's just thinking outside the box, kind of like what Mark was saying too. You know, are there ways to kind of move monies around and make things happen? So it will be interesting to see what this, I guess, this new hotel partnership with the convention center will look like. I would love to see a break even at some point for the taxpayers, and maybe even positive cash flow in the future. I think that would be a benefit to the arts community, and I think some of those monies could then flow into that.
Thank you, Greg. Dennis?
I've already talked a little bit about my view of how we might be able to finance the needed improvements at the Avalon. And I've listened to what Rick had to say about the convention center. And it's not something I have studied in detail, and I make a habit of not jumping in to support things unless I understand them more than I understand what's proposed there. In particular, I believe the proposal for improving the Two Rivers includes debt obligations. And debt obligations, in my mind, need to be thought of very carefully and look at the long-term impact that committing that kind of revenue will have on the whole community. Obviously, if we decide we have to have debt to support that kind of an operation, we'll have to have an election, and there'll have to be a lot more working out of the numbers and letting people understand, you know, what they're getting in exchange for what they have to give up as far as making debt payments. Because even though perhaps the convention center can break even, the 3 of them together, it's going to need a lot more money than just barely breaking even in order to support a large debt that I believe is going to be required to improve that property. As far as the amphitheater, I'm just curious because doesn't seem to me like it would have cost that much more to put in full-size bathrooms in the first place, rather than scraping on smaller bathrooms. I guess it just doesn't make sense to me that we didn't think far enough ahead to say, let's just put in the bathrooms. I can see perhaps waiting on the parking, but anyway, that's my view on those three things.
Thank you, Dennis. Abe, you're next.
Yeah, I don't want to get too repetitive, but again, we need to think of this as part of our economy, because it is not only in a short-term sense of the industry itself and tourism and that kind of thing, but the kind of community it creates and the kind of economy it creates for us. So I don't have much to add. We do need to be thinking about how we fund these things. And again, I would like to look for some creative sources like outside grants and outside funding, but it should always be the first thing we're looking at. And beyond that, let's just try and find solutions to it. But to answer the question directly, I do strongly think that the city should take a central role in funding these kind of things, because it's a huge part of our economy and a huge part of our quality of life.
Thank you, Abe. Randall? You're on mute.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with Greg on this. I think we need to take a long, hard look at why do we have to have the city owning all the major venues in our community? Is there an opportunity to sell one off? I think that this is a much bigger conversation than we'll have tonight, but I think the convention center would be a place to look to start. Before I was on the faculty here, I was the CEO of a national nonprofit who hosted an annual conference. And so I've hosted national conferences in 8 different cities, some about the size of Grand Junction, some much larger, but almost never in a municipal site. It's almost always been a hotel or a hotel that adjoined with a convention center. And, I think there's pros and cons of having the city own it, but I would be very open to looking at, is there a benefit for us to sell off the convention center? Could that money go toward financing the Avalon Theater? I think all things should be on the table for this. And looking again at public-private partnerships, what does it make sense for the city to do? What does it make sense for the private people to do?
Thank you, Randall. On to our next question. Is there a particular area you'd like to focus on to offer improvement and greater access of arts and culture for our community? Mark, this is back at you.
I love it. So I like this one because I really think that North Avenue has been treated like the stepchild of our community. And it's really the heart of our community. And we put a lot of effort down on Main Street, and I love the artwork down there. But I think we really need to look at North Avenue as a place that channels people into our community. And I think there's some different things that could be done down there. I think that's an area where you guys could offer some help as far as dressing up, cleaning up, and just bringing a better vibe to the main artery into our city. So that's a spot that I'd really like to look at, if that's worth investing in, especially with some future thoughts of maybe there being the rec center there at Lincoln Park. We need to think forward about where we're at and where we're headed. So I would think outside the box on that one. I'd really look at North Avenue as a place to bring a little more culture to. So that would be my answer to that.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Rick, you're next.
Michelle, could you repeat that question? I'm not sure I understood it the first time you spoke it.
I'll be happy to. Is there a particular area you'd like to focus on to offer improvement and greater access of arts and culture for our community?
I think I'd still like to focus on the core of the community. I think the more people we can bring downtown and to the river, the better our community is going to be, because so many cities have, because their sales tax comes from retail outside of their core, they start to forget their core. And whenever I talk with visitors, tourists, there are 2 main drawing points that bring them into our community. One is our river and our river access. but more importantly is the core of our city. So to me, we need to completely fill that out as best we can. And we also have the infrastructure there to support it. We also want to remember that we don't own North Avenue. So it gets very, very difficult for us to invest significantly in the North Avenue because that's a state highway. And I think a great number of people don't realize that. So can we in properties that align to it? The answer is yes. But the highway and the highway improvement there is not us. It's the state of Colorado. And I think we all know where they stand right now in terms of transportation funding. But I like it in the core because people can walk, they can ride their bike, they can go to a restaurant afterward, et cetera, et cetera. And likewise, as we develop the river. So I'd like to see it stay down into the core of our community.
Thanks, Rick. All right, so we have an opportunity here. We have a request from our audience to flip the order that you're answering your questions. So I'm going to flip to the bottom of the list where we normally end and have Abe go next, followed by Randall. So Abe, you're up.
All right. Thanks for the comment, Kendra. I agree. We're putting Mark on the spot constantly and forcing him to answer first. So he's probably happy. And I'm happy to answer sooner in the rotation. I love these questions. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think one part where we're lacking, as many communities are, is the education side of things, arts for our young people. They're going to be the people carrying the torch and taking it to the next generation. So I would love to see more programs, in D51. Of course, we can't directly influence D51 because it's a separate entity with a separate tax base. City Council doesn't dictate what they do. But I would love to see more opportunities for young folks. We have some really great resources in the community, like the library district. We have a fantastic, audio and video studio. We have the artist in residence program. The art center has all sorts of educational programs. So a combination of having it within the school system would be great, but also just creating more and more opportunities for our youth to get into the arts, I think is something that we could take even more of a focus on.
Great. Thanks, Abe. Randall, you're next.
Yes, art for the people, music for the people, culture for the people. That's what I'm about. I think we as a city could do a better job of making things more accessible. Like true examples, I think Fruta does a better job than Grand Junction currently. They have lots of great music festivals. They have their summer festival, fall festival. I think it's just a great way to make art and music accessible to people. There's the Cherry Creek Arts Festival every year in Denver. I think it's probably the pinnacle of the arts festivals. Again, it's open to everyone. It's beautiful. It's great community. I think the closest thing we have to that right now, in my mind, is the Downtown Music Festival partnered with the Epic Rides bike races. There's never a better feeling for me downtown than I'm downtown. Last year, I guess 2 years ago now, because last year was canceled because of COVID, my whole family did the mountain bike race, the short one, the 17 miler. And then we went downtown and watched the Revival Jazz Band from New Orleans, just blowing things up downtown. Shaky Graves played that festival a couple years ago. Many of you might not know Shaky. He's like probably one of the best alternative rockers right now. He started out as a music busker on the streets of Austin, and now he's just blowing up radio. He came to downtown Grand Junction to put on a huge show. I love to have more art for the people, music for the people, culture for the people.
Thank you, Randall. Greg, we're going to come back up to you.
Awesome, thanks. So idea my wife and I had a while back. So she sits on a board for a charter school here in town. We call it the hippie school. It's Juniper Ridge. It's a great school. And they've been kicking around the idea for a while of bringing artists into the school. I think they're in phase 1 construction. I think maybe in phase 2, they'd like to add a kiln onto the campus. So it's very much an art school. They're all about the arts, all about music. All the kids, start playing violin, I think in like 1st or 2nd grade. And they do some really cool stuff over there. So they want to have a kiln. And the thought is, well, could we maybe get someone from the arts community that comes in and teaches, and then also get some free studio time and use of the kiln as well. And so I guess I'd put that out to all of you if you know someone in the arts community that would be interested in something like that. I think the charter schools are kind of an untapped resource. It's very easy to interact with the charter schools here in town. And I think that'd be a great way for the kids then to have, firsthand exposure to some of these different arts. And I know the schools would absolutely welcome it. So I'd agree with Abe on that too. I think there's an opportunity there.
Thank you, Greg. And Dennis.
To answer this question, I think it's best that we look at the 2020 comprehensive plan that was recently developed by a great array of citizens and has been almost approved by the city council. But in the area of where a growth in the arts should occur, it identifies several places. Number one, more art in the public places, where the city already owns land to be imaginative and add things to be both attractive to citizens and visitors. And another thing that's mentioned in the plan is to participate in where there's private development, perhaps somewhat financially, to have them in private developments add some art on corners kind of thing or other art attractions. And then the other area mentioned is when we have infill, our growth plan under the comprehensive plan calls a lot for infill rather than expanding with housing developments all outside the county, spread here, there, and everywhere. And it makes sense that if we can, our future growth would be coming from infill. And that would be a real opportunity as we're designing maybe several story buildings or other reconstructions of existing properties, that we include that kind of thinking, include the art kind of thinking in those plans. And I guess it's a little bit off the topic, but I want to also refer to a section of the comprehensive plan that discusses that as we develop these new access to art, we make sure we develop multi-generational and multi-cultural kind of art. I think that will attract a lot of people who have perhaps not been involved in the arts community before, but if we can develop art and facilities that address perhaps others' culture, we should be able to expand it even more.
Thank you, Dennis. All right, this next question. Each year, the City of Grand Junction presents Champion of the Arts Awards to recognize individuals and businesses for their generous support of arts and culture in the Grand Valley. What are your thoughts on creating a similar award to recognize excellence among the arts and culture organizations themselves? And Abe, you volunteered to go first this time around, so you can take this question.
Really put me on the spot.
Now you know how Mark feels.
Yeah, it's not an idea I've heard before, but it sounds like a great idea. I mean, we need to recognize the organizations that do this work. As with so many things, there can be a central resource in the city or that kind of thing, but the people who are really effective at what they do is the people for whom it's a passion project. And that's true in any area, whether you're talking about business, the arts, the nonprofits that work with our homeless or disadvantaged communities. We have all of these incredible organizations in the city. So I think it would be fantastic to give them some recognition for the work they're doing. I love that idea.
Thanks, Abe. Randall?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, the individual award every year should probably go to Chuck and Robbie Bro. They're such a good benefactors for the arts in town. Every time I go to an event, their name is always the first one said over the loudspeaker. So my heart goes out to them for that. But I do think there's also organizations that do a great work in our community. And I spent a couple of years living in Frisco, where we had the Summit Foundation, and every year they hosted a huge gala to recognize people in the community, organizations in the community. And it was always such an honor to have your organization be listed among them. And I think there is a certain attractiveness to that, where if I work hard enough, if I contribute hard enough, that I could be given that award, not me personally, but somewhat hypothetically. And I think that could be a real bonus.
Thank you, Randall. Dennis?
Oh, I was already unmuted. A good thing I didn't say anything. This is an interesting question, and it's not one that I or probably anybody else here has had the opportunity to give much thought to. But I think it is obviously a good idea to identify people who have gone above and beyond in the arts community and recognize them and award them. I'm thinking of an example at the Arts Center, where recently a gentleman by the name of Jack Kephart passed away, and his widow donated $300,000 to the Arts Center to go about constructing a building next to the existing Art Center or attached to it to display Jack's work. And that has created a swell of let's get together and match that money to not only add that wing to the Art Center, but to upgrade the Art Center itself, which it desperately needs to be done, to bring it up to current standards and with electrical and that kind of thing. I think that kind of a person, the widow of Jack, should be high on the list of the people who we would nominate and honor for their service to the arts.
Thank you, Dennis. Mark?
Okay, this again is not my wheelhouse, so I would leave that up to those of you that know this better than me. I think maybe a board or something would be established amongst the art community that would make that decision. I would not be opposed to awarding someone who stepped forward and put their effort to support the community in a way like Dennis was recommending here. So I would be for that. Again, that wouldn't be a decision I could make. I would go to the people that are better served in that venue than me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Rick?
I think it's a terrific idea, and certainly the way we could honor that person is, I think folks know that in City Council, one of the most rewarding parts of a council meeting are the proclamations that we do every other week, and to recognize that type of and Robbie Bro, as Randall pointed out, people like that have put so much into the arts. Karen Hildebrand, I would put up there as well, that have done so much. They do it without a great deal of recognition. And I know when I walk into the Avalon, Deanna and I have made significant contributions to the Avalon Foundation over the years. And I did one recognizing my mother, who never lived here in Grand Junction, but as I said, was a fabulous vocalist and pianist. And I get a tremendous sense of pride. Nobody has to say anything to me. I get a tremendous sense of pride from the stone that sits up there on the deck that I can look at and remember my mom and how much she meant to me from the music and obviously as a mother. So recognizing people that go above and beyond, I think, is something we can do and do right away. And through the proclamation time is a great time to do that.
Thank you, Rick. Greg?
Yeah, I think it's a super cool idea. I think there's an opportunity there. I've served on other boards where we've done this before. And yeah, I think whether it's, once a year we pick, maybe the top 3 businesses or organizations, bring them down to City Hall, have the mayor present an award, call the newspaper, have them come down with a photographer. It's just a really neat opportunity. I'd like to see a lot more individuals engage with City Hall. I think there's an opportunity for the community there that they oftentimes don't see and understand. So, having stuff like that in the paper, like Rick was saying, get more exposure to these individuals and organizations that really give back so much. So I think it's a cool idea. I definitely wouldn't have an issue with it.
Thank you, Greg. So we have a question that's come from our audience here, and this one I believe is a follow-up on our conversation around the convention center. So the question goes, does anyone think there are enough hotels in the downtown area? If this is a large financial commitment from the community, could the money be used to support other businesses, industries that drive tourism to fill the current hotel rooms? Create a desire to come to Grand Junction other than the said convention or concert. Selling off the convention center may allow more money to be dispersed. And do you want to comment on that one, Dennis? You're muted.
Okay, now I'm not.
Okay.
When I heard both Mark and Randall discuss the possibility of selling off the property, it's something new for me to consider, and I think it deserves to be explored and looked at. The general question of, do I think we have enough hotel rooms downtown? I think perhaps we do, but I don't have the data, and I think before I could jump on a bandwagon about that, I'd have to see, all right, now, how many do we have? How many are we projected to have? And think about it from real data, not based on what I know from just listening here. I do think there are a lot of other options that could be considered for use of the money that may have to go into supporting the convention center. And I think I've discussed that earlier, but my mind would be wide open for what other alternatives there might be offered.
Thank you, Dennis. Randall, do you want to take this one next?
All right. I think, we've done a great job for the DDA, the city leadership, GJEP, of really having a beautiful, vibrant Main Street. And that includes lots of new hotels on the western side of Main Street. But I think we haven't yet really expanded beyond Main Street to Rood, to Colorado, to Pitkin, to Ute. And so I would love to have more of all sorts of art and hotel and leisure and lodging in downtown as a way of infilling a lot of the areas of downtown that quite honestly are an eyesore right now. I think it's my street, Colorado, has, it's a real mishmash of parking lots and empty buildings and raised things. I would love to have more hotels, more art studios, more music. I would just love to fill all that in. And so just expanding beyond Main Street and making it spreading the wealth.
Thank you, Randall. Greg?
Yeah, so it kind of builds on, I guess, my original thought around, whether convention center, should be sold off or maybe combined with a hotel. I think there could be an opportunity there. I don't think any of us are experts on hotels or vacancies, but I know Country Jam, they really, would bring a lot of people in and fill up the hotels. And so that, I think that's a reason why we've seen a lot more hotels going in, even out on 24 Road there. Our vacancy rate does tend to be really, really low here in Western Colorado, which I think was kind of a hidden secret for a while. And then these hotel chains found out about that and they thought, oh my goodness, this is really a good place to have a hotel. Obviously last year, not so great, with the COVID thing, but so yeah, I think there's some opportunities to kind of rethink some of those areas downtown. I think, having a larger hotel downtown. I like the one that's over at the college. We ate dinner there the other day, and something like that would be really cool downtown. And again, if it could, connect to the convention center, whether we sell off some property or not. I think there's definitely more conversations that need to be had there.
Thank you. Rick?
Well, today we have 4 hotels downtown, and the most recent, which is part of the Hilton chain, which is also owned by the Reimer families. And at the time they made the decision to build a 4th, they were very clear as we were talking to them about building the 5th one attached to the convention center, that they needed time to absorb the additional number of rooms. They were doing fine with the original 3, but they needed time for the 4th. They're probably going to need more time now with COVID. Hopefully in a couple of years, we can get back to that discussion about building the 5th and attaching it to the convention center. But I also should say, to clarify, at the time we made the decision to further invest in the convention center, at the very same time we put an RFP out for private enterprise to in fact look at purchasing the convention center. We got 0 replies, and I stress we got 0 replies. And one of the reasons we got 0 replies is because if anybody looking at the financials would look at the financials and see that the city was subsidizing the entities to the tune of $400,000 to $500,000 a year. And private enterprise usually is not in the business of losing money. And would they have potentially taken off our hands if we had put a $500,000 incentive? I don't know. We didn't put that in there. We didn't think it was a good use of taxpayer money, so we didn't do that. Now, could there be a time when the hotel is built that folks, that we want to revisit that and make it a private enterprise, and it's an ongoing enterprise that can generate positive cash flow, then we should look at that. And then those dollars can be reinvested in other areas of arts and culture. But I think we got to be careful to continue to talk about selling off the convention center, because it's been less than, well, it might be just a touch over 2 years when we tried to do that, and there were absolutely no takers.
Mhm. Thank you, Rick. Mark?
Okay, this is a 2-part question for me. I have a lot of agents that come here from the Denver area to call in this area. They love being able to stay downtown. We do have a vacancy issue pre-COVID of them finding rooms. So we do need more hotels within the community, without a doubt. The convention center is very outdated. We should have never put the funds in it that we put in to renovate it. We have an issue with parking downtown. We should probably, I'm going to put this right out here, those that building, if the city wants to keep it, and build a parking garage there that's accessible for the entire community. I think that would be a huge asset. That's forward thinking about what we're going to do with assets that the community has right now. That's a negative asset for us. So we need to think a little forward here, that I do believe we need more hotels. If we're going to keep that property, let's do something positive with it. So that would be my recommendation.
Thanks, Mark. Abe?
Thanks. I'm not somebody who is going to express an opinion on something where I don't have all the relevant facts. So I don't know the specific financials of the convention center, but Rick's the guy who's been on council for 6 years, and he knows the financials and the history of it intimately. So when he says that, I think it's something to listen to. You know, the fact is it's great to think about turning something into a private enterprise and getting it out of the city's hands where it's not a loss, but private businesses don't operate at a loss, or if they do, they don't operate for long. So there's a few more considerations there than just whether we want to or not. It's whether it's actually feasible or not. In terms of this specific question, I think we're doing pretty well on hotel rooms currently, because it's not just hotels. We also, a couple years ago, started allowing permitting short-term rentals. Technically, they were allowed before. So we have Airbnbs, we have VRBOs, we have hotels. There are multiple options. And I also think, you know, well, we're pretty spoiled here, and if we have to drive more than 10 minutes, it seems like a lot. For people coming out of town, it's not such a big thing to be in, you know, the Horizon Drive area, or even to be in Fruit or Palisade. And maybe they want to, you know, be closer to the wineries or that kind of thing. So, but we also need to think about the future, and there's kind of a chicken and egg situation. You know, again, private businesses don't operate at a loss. So if we build new hotels and we don't have the events and things that are going to fill them, it's not going to be sustainable for those businesses to operate. So we do have some exciting things coming. I mean, we've got the Palisade Plunge opening next year. that's probably going to bring some mountain bike traffic here. When Grand Junction Off-Road comes in, that'll bring people. JUCO brings people. Country Jam brings people. So we have those events, but those aren't things that can fill the rooms 365 days a year. But we are going to have more of that in the future. And to that person's specific question, I do think we should be focusing on those other industries that can help attract more folks. Our outdoor rec situation is incredible here. And while Fruita always takes all the credit for being the mountain bike town, Grand Junction has the better trails. And I can say that as a mountain biker and a future city council member, throw a little shade, but you know, we've got a lot of stuff going on here, and we definitely should continue the work that Visit Grand Junction and other places are doing to encourage those outside dollars coming in.
Thank you, Abe. So we are at time. We could probably keep talking for another half hour, but Zoom fatigue is a real thing in our lives. And as Randall mentioned, he is on lack of sleep due to his late night radio show. So we will move on. And to close, I offer you an opportunity to have a few minutes for closing remarks. And I'll start with Dennis.
Thank you. I kind of want to talk about the bigger picture of the city and my role that I perceive in it. Many people think I'm kind of a lone ranger. I've been involved in attempting to change processes and way decisions are made at the city for quite a while. But this time around, I have decided to listen and make relationships with existing city council people. And particularly Anna Stout and Chuck McDaniel have spent time with me, listening to me about changes that I see, and also talking to me so I get a better background of other issues that are going in the city. I believe that the city council does not have enough control over what happens at almost any level of the city government. Our charter calls for the city council to supervise the city manager and is not real clear about who gets to make what decisions. But I think we've moved too far past the point where the city manager has control over too many decisions, and we need to look at changing processes so that our city council is more the leader of what's going on, and the city manager is in the role of fulfilling the directions from the city council. As an example of one of the things that I think is just doesn't make sense to me is in the last 6 years, we've had 6 annual budgets approved by the council in a process where the city manager lays everything out for them and really doesn't provide much of an alternative for them to look at things and consider things. I think going 6 years without the council making even one substantive change is something we need to look at. And I also think that I will be able to bring my financial skills to the table that will coincide with others who have a lot better skills, like in the arts, than I do. I think being on the council is a team game, and I want to be involved with bringing my expertise to the table, but also listening and learning for the people who are already there.
Thank you, Dennis. Randall? Randall, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to be polite by turning it off and then turn it back on. I want to just finish up by expressing my gratitude to the nonprofits and the for-profits and the other people in our community who have promoted the art scene, have grown our music and grown culture across the last decades. We are a far richer and livable city because of you. On city council, I will support your efforts. I will champion them when given a chance to speak about people who do good things. I will mention you because I think you are the heart of our city, and we owe you a huge debt of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. Mark?
Sorry about that. So I would just like to say thank you for this opportunity to learn and listen to all of you. I will say to you that I am someone who listens to the community. I am part of the heart of the community. I go wherever there's an issue, I'm always there. I show up, I'm always present. So when people need things, I get things done. That's who I am as a person in this community. I believe this role is a community service role. And that job is to listen. And to go with what Dennis said, from the council's point of view, we're the voice for all of you. So we need to listen to that role that we're being asked and voted in to do. And that's what I will do for you. And I would appreciate your vote. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Abe?
Thank you. Thanks to all the organizations for putting this on. It's really important that we have these opportunities for people to meet the city council candidates and hear about our ideas. I definitely want to thank the audience members. You know, so many people in our community don't pay attention to the city council election until they get that ballot, and then they go and start Googling. So just want to thank you all for tuning in and being committed to our local election here. Also want to thank the other 5 candidates who chose to attend tonight. I wish all of the candidates had attended. You know, it's nicer when we can hear from everybody involved in these elections. I'm Abe Herman. I'm running in District E. I got my ballot this morning. Hopefully you all did too. And I hope you'll turn that in, and I hope you'll vote for myself for District E. You know, if you're somebody who believes that arts and culture is important, if you're somebody who wants somebody who's forward thinking and thinking 50 years into the future for what our kids and our grandkids are going to inherit here, I hope that you'll vote. And I also hope that you can support my campaign as well. You know, city council is essentially a volunteer position, but it does still cost money to run these things. So my website is abe4gj.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at abe4gj. And I would certainly appreciate your support and also appreciate your vote. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Abe. Greg?
Yeah, also want to say thank you for the organizations that put this together, and Nikki and Michelle, thank you for being on. I think this went really well. This was a really great forum. Great questions. I think we all learned something here. I know I did tonight. Some really in-depth answers. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity of serving on city council. I feel like I've got a lot of energy right now, and I can't wait to be part of a good board of directors to solve problems and come up with solutions. I think Grand Junction's heading in a really good direction. It's only going to grow, and we need to make sure that we maintain these partnerships. We maintain the arts and the culture that we've come to enjoy, and I think there's a lot more opportunities there as well. And so I would also appreciate support. Ballots did go out today. I got mine in the mail. It was pretty exciting to see my name on there. And so I would appreciate support. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to greg4gj.com. And good to see you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, Greg. Rick?
Thanks, Michelle, and I'd like to thank all the folks who have attended. This is late for 35 people to listen in on a forum, and I appreciate all of your time. One of the things that I would like to potentially suggest, Michelle, and for other folks leading these wonderful organizations associated with the arts, May would be a very, very good time before the budget time of the year to bring the organizations together and listen to the needs. I recommend it from a workshop standpoint because it's a more casual, less formal. Hopefully by that time we won't be on the dais any longer. I'd much rather be on the floor of the auditorium and listen and see if we can find some solutions ongoing. I hope everybody understands that right now, understandably, council, we're very focused on the recovery, but we can only hope that we can get through that recovery in a relatively short time, and then we need to move on to subjects of these natures. And some of the recommendations that have been made tonight are good points of conversation in a workshop environment. I too am running again. This is the hardest part about being on city council, is to run for reelection because you have to ask for a vote. And I'm more used to giving than taking, but I am in District A and I would very much appreciate your vote. I put a lot of time and energy into this city that I truly love, and I would like to continue to do that on your behalf. So thank you.
Thanks, Rick. We did have a question from our audience asking about the other two candidates and if there were a reason they did not participate this evening. Everybody was invited and included in the forum. I unfortunately was not the person that did the invitation, so I don't know what the reasons were for the other two individuals not attending. So I just want to put that out there and be as transparent as possible. We also had another comment from a participant that said, "Please thank all participants. No national debate was this good. All participants were very civil. I couldn't ask for more." So thank you and appreciate all of you for that civility for sure. This event has been recorded and the link to the recording will be shared by the hosting organizations tomorrow. Please see our social media accounts for more information. Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to our candidates, and thank you to our candidates for joining in this dialogue around arts and culture in Grand Junction. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care and be well.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.
Right.
Thank you.